Let's see here. Right. Welcome, everyone. This is the Monday, March 31st, 2025 meeting of the Northampton Historical Commission. And just to advise everyone, we are meeting remotely and the meeting is being recorded. We always start these meetings with general public comment. If there is anyone in attendance who has anything they would like to share with us that is not related to an item already on the agenda, we would be happy to hear that now. And it looks like, are people still coming in, Sarah? You're muted.
I know by now. I think we're good.
Okay. So it doesn't look like anybody else has anything else they would like to offer. So we will then move on to the chair's report. And I had a couple things that I wanted to mention to everybody. One is that we have a number of CPA applications in front of us this round. As everybody knows, I am the Historical Commission representative to the Community Preservation Committee. And kind of surprisingly, we have 5 applications in front of us that fall into the historic preservation category. One of them is a project of the cities. That's the historic gravestone conservation work at West Farms and Park Street cemeteries. And the Department of Public Works is sponsoring that. But it's in the preservation category. And the others are all from our historic nonprofits. I take that back. We do have one coming from us. This is the National Register nomination preliminary work for Laurel Park. And so that, if that's funded, that will be a project that we, the commission, will be taking on. So just keep your eyes open for that. And then the other 3 are projects of our historic nonprofits, one for the Ruggles Center, one for the Daughters of the American Revolution House on South Street, and one for historic Northampton. The Ruggles and DAR projects are all ADA compliant, both ADA compliance. We reviewed the DAR project. I believe it was in the fall, proper December. And then the Ruggles Center also has an application in front of us. And then the final one is Historic Northampton, which has applied to do some continuing work on their historic costume collection. So it's pretty exciting that we've got a great complement of historic projects in front of us, and we'll see what happens. Second of all, I just wanted to mention that Michael is kind of serving as the point person, Michael Curtin, that is, our commissioner, for the work on the Abolition and Reform District National Register nomination up in Florence, which is being done in coordination with the Ruggles Center. And Michael, I don't know if you want to say a few words about where you are in that. If you're not comfortable at this point, that's fine too.
I'll just say very briefly that I was in touch with Steve, and Steve is sending the documents off to Mass Historical Commission. He said the beginning of this week, so it should be soon. And he was going to send a copy to me, and I will share those when they're available, and we'll see what Mass Historical has to say in response. We, of course, expect a response to make some adjustments, but we're feeling pretty good about where things stand right now. I think we have the outline of a district. Hannah, you participated in our walk around when we were trying to select exactly where the boundaries would be and everything. And I think we're getting to a point where we have a pretty good looking territory mapped out. So we'll just have to negotiate that with Mass Historical, get the documentation together, and finalize the nomination.
Great. Well, Michael, thank you for taking that on. And it's a big chunk of work, and we all appreciate it. So thanks for keeping on top of it. And then finally, Sarah and I have begun work on the outbuildings inventory project that we were funded to do through community preservation in the last round. And at this point, we have a couple maps in hand, and we're going to be going out and looking at potential outbuildings to be inventoried that are, we're starting with the properties that are already in the local historic districts and also the National Register districts. So we'll see how that goes. We'll give you an update at a future meeting, but we're just getting going on that now. So it's coming along. Okay, I think that's it. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. And these are from our February 24th meeting. And if everyone has taken a look at those and has any comments on them, anybody have any comments on them? Okay. In that case, I would accept a nomination, a motion to approve these.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion about them? Okay. Okay, if not, then Sarah, we need to take a vote.
Right, quick roll call, Greg,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes, and I think we lost Douglas.
Douglas?
I think his screen froze there for a minute and then disappeared.
Did we take the vote later on? Can we do that, Sarah? Just keep going with the meeting?
We'll still have a quorum to approve it, so, Martha?
Okay.
You want to round it out?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, great, thank you, and and he's back again.
Okay.
He's
Do you want
going.
to ask? Let's see him. Douglas? Okay. Well,
I'm back.
are you back?
Yes, I am.
Great. Okay, we just voted on the minutes. We had a quorum even though you were temporarily paused. So the minutes passed.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, well, then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the continuation of the request for the local historic district certificate of appropriateness pursuant to section 195 of the Northampton Code for construction of a 3-building mixed-use development on the site of an existing parking lot. And this is Sunwood Builders. It's 3 Elm Street, parcel 31D-103, HIS-24-7. That's the city project number. We've received a number of some information about the project, specifically kind of a summary from Kuhn Riddle, the architects, responding to our comments that we made and questions that we asked back in February. And those are the minutes that we just approved. So before I ask the architect, who's Charles Roberts, I just wanted to just remind everyone that this project, we began reviewing this back in December and had asked for continuation at that time and reviewed it again in January and February and asked for continuations on those reviews. We are still waiting for comments from the comments for the planning board's initial meeting to be addressed. So we don't have the final design of this building in front of us tonight. It's possible it could be final, but we don't know. And my understanding is the planning board will be reviewing this again in April. Is that correct, Sarah? We think?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's the plan. Okay. So tonight, and I just wanted to remind everyone, and this is in the staff report, that the planning board is going to be reviewing uses, trip generation, stormwater, zoning conformance, traffic flow, etc. And we are really geared or limited to looking at the architectural character and design of the building and its context on the property and within the historic district. Okay. We had a number of questions at the last meeting, and I just wanted to emphasize there were three things that stood out. One was there was concern about the full lot, the impact of this building on the full lot, and the impact of the building on the other buildings on the lot, and what the future is for that. There was concern again about the fit of the building within the surroundings. And then at a more micro level, the largest of the windows facing the district, Elm Street. And then there were several others too, but those were the larger ones that stood out. So with that, Charles, if you are here and you would like to bring us up to date on where you are with things, that would be great. And you're muted. You'd think by now we would all have
You'd
gotten the hang
think
of
by
this.
now, you would think by now, exactly right. Yeah, anyway, you missed my cordial salutation. Yeah, thanks for letting us join you tonight and talk about some of the updates that we've been working on in the project. Like you said, Martha, the last time that we was before you was on February 24th. Alon Tierney from Kuhn Riddle made the presentation. We've been working, sort of in tandem with the planning board. I think we're in a good place for the planning board right now. A lot of their concerns outside of the technical issues you were talking about in terms of stormwater and trip generation and those sorts of issues were really about the State Street elevation. And so for the planning board, we've been focusing on that. I'm going to be showing you the information and images we've developed for the planning board along those lines. And also, specifically, we've been working on the front building on Elm Street, trying to developing a character and a detailing of the brick that feels more compatible with what folks are familiar with in the historic downtown district. So, and then in terms of the how this building kind of fits in with the other two buildings on the site, the church and the rectory, we can review that in site plan. I can sort of show the relationships between the buildings and the frontage along Elm Street, and then if Shaw Perry wants to weigh in and talk about plans for the church and the rectory, that might be helpful as well. So with that, I will start sharing the screen here. So this I have these before and after shots. So this was the last rendition of the design that we presented back on the 24th, and we heard the concern about the flat nature of the brick detailing, these larger windows facing out on Elm Street and State Street, right on that prominent corner, and then it just, some of the idea of maybe bringing more brick into the design of this portion of the building and dropping out some of the fiber cement, spandrels we see here. And so this is the current rendition. So sort of working from the top down, we've added a cornice line along the top of the building, which is also, we're picking up that sort of same cornice line down here, and the elevator and stair entry tower on the apartment block. We've gotten rid of the larger windows that looking into the apartment units, and we're doing sort of more of a rhythmic array of punched windows for those apartments. I'll just zoom in here a little bit. We're adding some a crossbuck in these windows. So these are casement windows, but the crossbuck is meant to emulate a double hung window. So it helps bring the scale of these a little bit more into the familiar scale of some of the openings in the buildings downtown. We are maintaining, a larger glass here into the restaurant on the second floor, which isn't and it's interesting because the first two floors of this building are commercial. We have the cafe downstairs off the park area. Then we have the restaurant up above, and it's not uncommon for even in the downtown buildings to have these larger openings, sort of peering into the looking into the main public spaces of the building. We're adding, as you can see, some and actually I have some detail shots that are going to be a little more helpful than this shot here. So I think I'll get into some of the brick detailing aspects when we're looking at those images. This is as you move up the street, looking into the upper terrace of the upstairs restaurant. Oh yeah, this again was the initial what you saw last last meeting, and whoops, how we've modified it. So you get a sense of the cornice being this really, it's a nicely proportioned cap that that helps anchor the building. We think visually, it picks up on the brick detailing and sort of adds another layer of interest and historic kind of relevance to the building and its relationship to the downtown fabric. I do have a Google Earth shot of the street, which I can bring up a little bit later, just to give everybody a reminder of what downtown Northampton looks like. Not that you necessarily need it, but and then moving up the street, this is what we saw last time, and the big difference again being the addition of this cornice line along here, because in this elevation we're not really changing the window patterns and the fenestration or the idea about the signage, but as you turn the corner, you will pick up the read of that cornice line. So just to sort of back up, whoops, sorry, as you're coming down the corner. This is a view of the entry that we showed you last time, and sort of this is what we've really been focusing on with the planning board, is what's this pedestrian experience like along the length of this parking garage elevation of the building. And so what we've done here is we've added in these trellis planters, which are going to extend out of the ground planters that we have, which are all part of the stormwater drainage for the building, capturing downspouts. We've added street trees in along here. I think there's 6 or 7 street trees we're adding in, which again is going to help just soften and humanize and make this a more pedestrian friendly street. The cooling and helping reduce heat island with these trees, and just sort of creating more shade. And this is the view from last time, and then how we're currently envisioning it. The addition of the trees and the planters. We've actually changed the spacing of these garage openings, where we've reduced the size of them to be these more square openings, and we're working with the rhythm of the single windows here, and the bays, the double windows here. So there's a larger opening at this bay, smaller opening here. I realize it's kind of hard to read through the trees, but I have an elevation that'll help make that a little more clear. And again, you can see how these two forms are kind of talking to each other nicely with the cornice line, articulating the rhythm and the scale of those elements. Again, you can see how these downspouts come down here and then run behind these wall planters, and then into these stormwater rain gardens here along the street edge. This is the site plan, and which I think I reviewed last time with the so our building is here. It's set back from Elm Street about 50 feet. We have this outdoor garden terrace here, and then the dining terrace off the restaurant. St. Mary's, as you can see, is pretty much right on the street. It has the grand entry stair that comes into the church, but it's pretty much right on the street. The rectory is set back further behind the church, and our building splits the difference between the church and the rectory coming forward, but it's buffered nicely from Elm Street with these two garden terrace areas. And these are some of the images we have of that. So just kind of a little bit of a bird's eye view of that outdoor dining for the restaurant. and stepping down that lower terrace off the cafe that's just kind of right on the corner of Elm and Main. Oops. Again, so as you're walking down the street, this person standing on the sidewalks, this would be a view, pretty much if you're standing at the curb on the sidewalk on Elm Street at eye level, looking into the restaurant dining area. So there is a nice landscape buffer zone between the raised dining terrace, to help create scale and separation and more pedestrian friendly. So the building's not right on the street, but it's step back, and there are these layers within the site that help soften that feel. And this is the terrace off the lower cafe area. So carving into the site to help as the site slopes down from Elm Street, creating this nice outdoor garden area. Again, the stepping of the terrace and the layers and the landscaping and the greenery all help soften up this corner, and buffer the building from the street, so it doesn't feel like it's right on the street, but it's separated by these layers of a pedestrian friendly experience. And then some of this image helps, you can start to read some of the brick detailing in here. We're adding this coined brick course that runs up the first 2 stories of the building. Kind of helps create a gravity and strength of form for those elements, as well as the interest in the brick detailing. A soldier course brick band that wraps around the building, separating the commercial from the residential. This is the State Street elevation, kind of a flat view. It's a little abstract. You'll never really perceive the building this way, but it does help sort of talk about the rhythm we're creating with these garage with these openings, where there's a smaller opening underneath the single rows of windows, and then where the bays pop out, it's a double wide opening. So it's not a super repetitive series of openings that where they're all the same. You start to read a rhythm of the A and the B, and with the trees centered on the larger openings, and these sort of wall planters coming down and being in alignment with the downspouts. Then we are creating. We've narrowed the opening into the garage here. This is brick paving that goes into this would be an exit only entrance or exit, and then this is another little bench park area that's set back from the sidewalk to help modulate the overall length of the building, breaking it up into clearly breaking it up into 3 sections: the apartment building, what we call the connector, and the front Elm Street building. The before view. This is what you saw last time. In the after view, it's not as dramatic as some of the other images, but you do get a sense of the rhythm of the street trees marching along State Street, and you can start to read, the development of the Cornice line, and how these new punched windows, with these revised punched windows in the front building, kind of work with the overall composition of this building, but also the buildings on Main Street. Let me just bring up this one Google Earth image just to show you what we've been. I think I have to stop share. New share. So some of the cues we've been looking at are the nicely proportioned cornice line that helps cap these buildings. Some of the recessed bays in here, which we're picking up in with our brickwork, and then also the articulating the lintels over the windows. These are these arched kind of ornate lintels. We're doing something a little more straightforward with a horizontal lintel over the windows, but we feel that what we're doing is in spirit, in the spirit, in a way that's, it's not replicating it, but it's honoring it, and it's in the spirit of what these buildings are doing, scale wise and articulation of the materials and the window and facade treatments. So I'll end on this image and turn the floor over to the commission.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks a lot.
Mhm.
And thank you for responding to all of our questions. So what we're going to do is we'll do the round again, have the commissioners ask questions, get clarifications. We'll also hear from members of the public if they wish to speak, and we also will then provide our thoughts about how we think this is or is not adhering to our design standards. So let me open this up to questions for the commissioners first, and I'll start with Hannah. And you're muted.
Hi. I don't have any immediate questions. I think that I'm feeling good about the changes that you've made. I really appreciate the details, and I feel like the building as a whole, especially with the roof cap and the brick detail, is feeling much more integrated with the downtown and reflects what we asked for and what we were looking for. So thank you very much. I really like the smaller windows on the State Street side of the garage and the change in the height and the treescape. So it was nice to see those details. I unfortunately didn't get to spend a ton of time looking at these because I only got to look at them this afternoon. So I don't have any immediate questions, but I might have some more after we have more of a discussion.
Okay, fair enough. Michael.
I agree with Hannah. I really like where we are. I really appreciated Shaw's comments in the last meeting where he put the whole project into perspective as far as the relationship between this building and the other buildings on the parcel, which are not part of our decision here, but it really helped me understand why and how the development of this part of the property was envisioned the way it was. And I'm very happy with the changes we've seen and the way in which I think the design now resonates pretty well with downtown, given the kind of structure that we're dealing with here. And going back to what Martha had said earlier, is we're not looking for buildings that emulate the downtown, but we are looking for ways in which they complement the character of the downtown. And I think that right now this looks pretty good. So that's where I stand. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Douglas.
I think the changes are very positive and have brought together many good things that we've been seeing. Especially just that one cornice ad and the corner detailing on the brickwork. So thank you for listening to us and applying your input to it and adding these changes. The transition to garden patio and the transition to the lower cafe and what that work is and those benches and the brickwork there, I think is important to stay in character with the building, and I think is a great entity of softening the building, especially on the upper level, softening it from the rectory, and to keep up the work with brickwork and the detailing in those patio elements as it transitions down around the corner. That street view you gave was very helpful. It was a little hard to see the details of, are those benches coming along the sidewalk as it curves? Are they garden beds?
It's a combination of benches and garden beds, yeah.
So keeping that in the brickwork of the building and is all as it looks that is happening, and I think is a great softening device and is working.
Okay. Greg can weigh in or can ask questions, right, Sarah?
I have no comment.
No comments. Okay. Okay, I agree with the others. I think that you've worked really hard to get this down to more of a pedestrian scale, and I really appreciate that. And I agree that the detailing on especially the building on the corner, which I think is the most important, especially for the district, has really come a long way. I would just ask you to look a little bit more at some of the other details downtown. Like one thing I was thinking about when I was looking at the image of that, that block, would it be within scale to add some kind of denteling or corbelling or brackets along the top, along the cornice line? That's something just to think about that might, again, distinguish it a little bit more. And I don't mean to make a ditzy suggestion because we certainly don't want that, but that's just something to think about. The trees along State Street really concern me. How wide is that sidewalk?
We've been working with Carolyn and the DPW on this, and we have a minimum of 5'6" width from the tree trunk to the building, which is enough to give accessibility clearance down the sidewalk. It is close. They're going to have to be. Our renderings probably don't accurately capture the species of trees that Jeff Squire is going to be specking out, but they will be trees that are, that are sort of designed to grow up more than out. That is it all helpful?
Okay, well, so it's not so much the form of the tree. I think that's probably a good choice, but it's what they're going into. If you only have, I mean, they've got to be in some kind of a plant bed,
Right. So
a
they're
tree
going.
pit, and it's going to have structural soil with it, and possibly some kind of permeable paver. Are you planning on using permeable pavers there?
No, it's a tree grate, which is kind of pretty. I think they're pretty common in downtown Northampton and in most urban areas. We have street trees. So it's a 4x4 iron grate that allows water to percolate down in. There is Jeff has done a section showing the structural tree root ball for or containment that's carrying the root of the tree, and so technically it has been worked out. We've been again working with the planning board and planning department on these details.
Okay, well, I would just be really careful about that because I think that it's going to require a creative combination between some kind of structural soil, possibly some permeable pavers, and I would ask you to look at that because the last thing you want to do is to put trees in there that don't survive and you don't have the infrastructure in place to replace them. So,
Right.
okay.
I completely hear what you're saying. I do think these tree grates are designed to allow the water to get into the trees.
Well, they are, but these trees will have a larger root system on them, and that's why I'm saying looking at a structural soil and possibly a permeable paver around them would help just assure their survival long term.
Mhm.
So I'm just,
Okay.
that's a suggestion that you look at. I, can't design this for you. The other thing,
Can I add something here, Martha?
sure,
Just
Michael,
really
yeah.
quickly. I didn't mention this because I didn't think it was part of our purview, but I totally agree with Martha on this. And it's really important to think about water filtration for the trees. It's also really important to think in terms of planting saplings instead of root balled trees so that they can adapt to the environment as they're growing. They'll take an extra year to take off, but they'll grow much better. They'll find their feet much better. There are things that really need to be thought about here because you can't just stick it in the ground and put a 4 feet grate around it and not expect it to die because that's what it's going to do. And so yeah, anyhow, I agree with you, Martha. This is really important.
Yeah, and also just in time, one thing to look at again with the permeable pavers is you might want to, this is hard to do without a plan, but you might want to look at, making an entire strip of the sidewalk in that where you have those trees out of permeable pavers and then mixing that with concrete or whatever the rest of your material is for the sidewalk, because again, they're going to need a lot of infiltration.
Yep.
And the permeable pavers mixed with a structural soil should be able to provide you with that. So I don't know how, yeah. So I have some experiences working on Boston parks and really dense urban areas, and it's quite a system, but it's important that it get done. So on that note, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the area around the patios that Douglas mentioned. In the rendering, and I know this is just a proposal, there are these kind of shrubby things that are down below the walls along the street. And yeah, so you know, this is a big, big, tall pile of a building. And I think having low ornamental trees like this is really, it's out of scale. This is more of a residential scale of a planting. And especially as you go up Elm and you've got this outdoor patio where people are sitting out, it's going to get really hot there in the summer and hotter as the years go by. Then I would encourage you to think about doing a street tree planting along here with trees that have a high canopy so that they're going to get tall and the canopy is going to be up high. And that I think will bring this building more into scale with the street itself, and then also provide you with the shade that you're going to need long term. So again, I'm sure our city arborist has a lot of suggestions for good street trees to use that would probably fulfill that criteria. But I would seriously look at that and see if that's something that could be done. Yeah, so here we have you see the trees here along State. I'm looking at the very right-hand part of this picture, upper right-hand part of this picture, and it looks like the tree is just sort of plopped into the sidewalk, and that's just not going to work. So what I'm suggesting you do is make a strip all the way across the sidewalk of permeable pavers, and then do a structural soil system under there.
Yeah, I wish I had the site drawings. I mean, that's sort of an artifact of rendering. This
Okay.
is a facsimile of reality. But yes,
Okay.
so we're not showing the tree grace, but they're going to be there, and I'll certainly pass along the suggestions of the permeable pavers to Berkshire Design Group, and we can also look at some larger trees along this edge. I don't think that would be a bad thing.
No, I mean, you could put a ground cover under them, just to keep a soft edge here. But yeah, I think you definitely need some height there just to make it, match the more commercial, industrial character of this. And then the other thing is, You know, one of the concerns I have about this commercial space is that if it remains vacant for a long time, and as you know, we have a lot of restaurants in Northampton, a lot of restaurant spaces that are vacant, and have been that way for a while. So what are your thoughts about that? Because I think, having an empty space like that in such a prominent location would be, kind of sends out not a great message.
Shaw, do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, everybody for listening into the presentation. I just wanted to touch for 1 second on the trees. A part of the plan that we provided to the planning had a cross-section. The details for the trees have been completely passed through the regulations and stipulations for the tree root. There's a large scale structure that goes underneath the sidewalk to create much larger area for the tree to grow into the future. And unfortunately, we don't have a cross section of that. It's something in the range of 7 or 8 feet by 8 feet square that's 5 feet tall, all full with structural soil for the tree.
Okay.
But regardless, this has been taken by the architectural landscape architect. So anyways, the other trees that you mentioned around the port, I completely agree. We were under the feeling that lower trees were required earlier in the conversation as to respond to views from the sidewalk. However, if you would suggest, I would love to add taller trees because I believe that the scale is more appropriate for larger trees to go through the side of the sidewalk and impact the balcony and the relationship between the restaurant and the sidewalk. However, going into the commercial side of the restaurant, there's an absolute fear and concern about the viability of commercial space. And at this point, the best way for me to think about it is that the concept of if you build it, they will come. And I'm thinking that the vision is that this spot is going to be such a vibrant new part of town that it's going to bring something new that hasn't been in town. The one thing we don't have is parking, but other than that, that corner could potentially drag all kinds of people action between the resident side and between the academy and the beautiful location that it has with the patio. That is our focal point, that we believe that we could bring in a restaurant that will fill the space. And if it doesn't, it's going to be, for one, difficult for us to maintain it financially. And I think that we may end up, theoretically, you may end up looking for a different type of a commercial space to fill in if it doesn't work out. But our vision is that we will make any effort to maybe partner up with a restaurateur to assist them in a build out to make it viable. So we would assist the building, it would assist downtown, and in return, downtown will assist the restaurant. So that's comment to the commercial space.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to, at this point, then open it up to any members of the public who would like to make comments or ask questions. If you do, please identify yourself and your address. And raise your hand if you want to speak. So I have Patricia Lee Lewis. And Patricia, if you're trying to speak, you're muted.
Of course.
Okay.
Sorry. I live across the street in the old school commons, where we, look right out on that property, of course. And so we have a lot of interest in how it works in this very difficult intersection that we already have. Um, I understand that it's the planning board that talks with the developers about what will happen with cars coming out of the building, how that's going to work and impact safety and so on. So we won't talk about that here tonight, but that obviously is a concern. I love it that you brought up the trees, Martha. That's just so important to help that whole development work well in this important downtown. We've been getting more and more little trees planted here. You know, it used to be full of trees downtown. So all in favor. And I'm glad to hear Shaw talk about how they're making arrangements for the tree roots. I love the cornices. I think what you suggested to make them a little bit more special is a great idea. Anything that can be done, it really helped change the look of the buildings. All of the details that have been changed, I think, are great. I'm still not happy looking from Smith College down at the expanse of concrete that goes off to the left, north from the cafe, from the restaurant. It still just looks like a wall to me that is not friendly and blocks, it just tends to block energy and views and so on. I would love to see more brick back there. And I think, yeah, I'll save all my other comments for the planning board, which have to do with drainage and things. But I do want to thank the developers and architects. I think they really did listen to you and to the comments of the public, and they've done they're going in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Patricia. And then Garrett Stover. And Garrett, you're muted. Are you there? Your hand is up. Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to offer comments? Okay. Well, if that's the case, what I would like to do.
I think Garrett's mute is off now.
Oh, Garrett, are you there?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Okay, great. We're about to move on, so we got you just in time.
Yeah, so I'm conscious of not wanting to be a broken record, but I'll be a 45 instead of a long playing one this time. I want to echo Patricia's comments. The main, I really appreciate the changes that have been made. And I'm deeply grateful for those. My remaining worry is that the Elm Street facade in particular is just not substantial enough to make that corner building a unified, compatible presence on that corner. And I don't think it needs to be a single cube, but if the brick continued onto the residential portion there, and if possible, if the fenestration was similar to the rest of the other facades at the corner, that would be great. And I particularly don't appreciate the signage niche that's cut out of I think it's out of the brick facade. That, again, it just lessens the substance of that building. And I know early on in your conversations about the relationship of the new building to the historic district, you were particularly concerned about coming down Elm Street from the heart of the district, how the building would be perceived. So a little, it might be a lot on the budget side, but I think reinforcing the moves that have been made would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. Is there anyone else in the member of the public that would want to make any comments? Okay, we don't have any more hands up. So at this point, I would, is there any more discussion on the part of the commissioners? Douglas.
I'd like to reiterate, and it may fall to the planning board, but again, to go over once quickly that park space in front of the cafe and in front of the restaurant and how it goes around the corner and how it will be used by the public, how, because it'll be a focal point if there's a lot of people gathering there, how they're gathering there, what the seating is like, and all those interactions of that public space and the building to really be thought through. And maybe that may go to the planning board, but again, the rendering that's there, the benches just taper from the sidewalk out. It's really not fully illustrated at this time, but that clarity may be needed for the planning board.
Okay. Douglas, just to follow that up, are you questioning just the design of that or the functionality? Or
No,
both?
just the design and the detailing of it, and the and just the detailing and the design of it. Because it is a major part of the building. I'm not sure how it lays to what department to review that design.
Okay. And Charles, is that something that you are doing or the landscape architects? Charles is off the camera. Okay. Charles, did you hear me?
I'm busy.
Yeah.
I was just unmuting myself here. So Jeff Squire and the Berkshire Design Group have taken the lead on the design of this. Can I bring it back up to look at it while we talk?
You may. Yep.
Okay. Where'd it go? I have to somehow I lost that file. Let me just get it back here.
And while you're doing that, if you can multitask, and if not, that's fine. I totally
Sure.
understand. I'm assuming the project is really is in the schematic phase at this point. Are you into design development?
Well, this is a little bit of both, actually.
Okay.
We're sort of, we've completed the basic concept of the building, and we're starting to develop the building details in parallel with the permitting loop. The whole,
Right.
and so we're in both worlds right now. We're still ironing out some of the basic moves that we're talking about here, but we're moving it along at the same time.
Okay. All right. Do you have your drawing?
I do. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so let me just zoom in on this a little bit. So the idea is that we're using combinations of a combination of wood, stone, planter beds, and then sort of the brick on the building to create, a sense of warmth and natural materials to bring life into this element here. You can see that, and this would be a concrete retaining wall with a wood lattice screen attached to it. So it actually pulls it away from the brick. I know that Douglas, you mentioned the idea you like the brick here, but I think there's a really nice thing that's going to be happening with the wood and the brick coming together, and the wood's being sort of this warmer material that's people are in contact with and wraps around and becomes this bench. So you can see this, along here is sort of a line that could be, bench, and then it's separated from this bench here with the built-in planter that steps, and then this bench kind of wraps around the entire inside of the park, and then comes around here to where these folks are sitting. So again, it's the bench wraps around the entirety of the park, and then it steps here as the street steps down, and kind of is a combination of bench and planter and platform. And I guess when we're talking about larger trees, is this the area that we're thinking that maybe the trees get a
Yes,
little bigger?
exactly. And I would
So
encourage you to look at like pulling that, I don't know, we don't know what's happening with the site long term. And maybe this is more directed at Shaw, but that just pull that street tree line up. Don't just stop at the building, but I would go as far as, you can without disrupting your ability to redevelop the other buildings, just to get the trees established. So, and I think that will help kind of pull the site together in the interim. It can help pull the site together in the interim.
So bringing
Yeah, I
trees,
think that,
bringing like tree line maybe up to here. There's a nice big tree
yeah,
here, existing
I think
tree.
those are Japanese maples, as I remember.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, I mean, they're lovely, but they're sort of mid-size. They're not a super large, super tall street tree kind of tree. So I'm not suggesting that you deep six them, but you may want to like think about that for the long term, and in the interim, bring the street trees up.
I'm just not sure how they would survive in the understory of a larger tree, and that you wouldn't want to
Yeah.
crowd them out. So I would that's something that Jeff can certainly look at.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then, I mean, this is really more in your design development stage, but the wood that you're planning on using on those terraces, again, if I'm speaking like I'm getting ahead, tell me. Are you you're not thinking of a tropical hardwood, are you? Are you thinking more like a
Yeah,
thermal treated?
we wouldn't be using teak or mahogany or anything like that. It might even end up being a composite material that will be stable and not stain and not warp and crack and check over time, but have the warmth of wood. So the what exactly that material is needs to be determined, I think, in the end. But the idea is that it will have the character and feel and warmth of wood.
Okay. Douglas, does that help you at all? You still have questions?
No, it does help, and it's really you see all the people gathering in Pulaski Park, and to always be thoughtful of how people will gather here. I do see the inner ring and so forth, and I think the street trees over the shrubs is a good improvement. Um, but I just kind of, it's more of a question of how will the pedestrians interact with it? Will there always be a row of people sitting on that outer curve, waiting for the crosswalk light or so forth? And so just have those thoughts in mind.
Yeah. Okay. We have one other member of the public here who'd like to speak, so I'll acknowledge Kathleen. And yeah.
Hi, I'm not usually participating in anything like this. I live at 35 Holly Street in the Old School Commons, and I have two thoughts. One is the gray concrete exterior does look like it gives me an impression of a factory. And the second is about the restaurant. And since I do a lot of walking, downtown. I'm right here. The emptiness of a lot of the storefronts is really disturbing and really sad. And the idea that could happen at that corner is, that's so much in the forefront. So those are my two thoughts. But it's been interesting listening to all the effort that you're all putting into this.
Thank you, Kathleen. And can you tell us your last name for the record?
My last name is Coleman, Coleman.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think, the use of the site is something that the planning board is dealing with. If it's a permitted use and the developer is invested in it, then, we can't really do much about that. But I think I expressed the concern earlier too, and we'll just hope, we'll hope the best. If Shaw is confident that he can keep that space going, great. It will definitely people that corner, which is something we haven't had in a really long time, if ever. So, okay. Any other comments or questions by the commission? Michael?
Charles, could you bring up the image of the from the Elm Street side looking back, that we have the rectory on the left-hand side and the,
Yep.
let's see.
See if I can navigate there without getting lost.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
view?
Yeah, this is the view. Garrett's question had to do with this, and I wanted to ask about this because I also, I don't want to be sort of like, well, this is my taste. We could go on endlessly with things. I think you've been very responsive, Charles and Shaw, as far as the input that we've given. I do sort of think there's a kind of thinness and verticality here that Garrett was pointing to, and he was asking if brick could, if there would be a way to kind of continue the brick over. And I understand the middle building is behind the rectory. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep, correct.
So there would be a logic to continuing the brick over to the middle building and giving that a kind of a warmer feel there on the corner. And I know this is about cost, and I'm trying, and it's also about the lead energy efficiency stuff. And I don't mean to be a pain in the ass, but I think he has a good question there. Visually, to me, that's a kind of like a very vertical strip of brick that just sort of stands out there. Now, I understand we don't have trees yet and other things like that that are going on. But so my question would be about that. Is there, following up on his comment, what do you think about that visual there?
Well, everything is subjective, but and we like the way that we actually like the verticality of this piece. We feel like it really anchors the corner, and that and it kind of makes the brick stand out in a way that it separates it from the rectory building instead of all the brick rolling around and sort of becoming, obscuring into the rectory. It actually helps separate our building from the rectory in a way visually, and anchors that corner. Whereas if you start to bring the brick all the way down that larger building, in some ways you lose the impact of the brick on the new building. It's like it almost becomes too much, and you lose the strength of reading the corner. That's.
I may just add to that if I could.
Sure.
I just wanted to point out that through this process, we have gone through all kinds of iterations in the design to try and both mitigate the design, but impact the comments from the board and the public. And one of the changes that we experienced was changing all that brick that you just mentioned. And part of it that felt us going back, taking back that we tried the brick on and decided to keep it off, was that after all, this is an anchor and it transitions into another style of building that's not completely, you don't want to create like two separate items that are unrelated to each other. And we were trying to soften the transition between a full-on brick on one side that mimics a lot more what's happening downtown, and then turn a corner and then start softening up the transition into the largest section of the building. And from just my perspective, I think that we went through that and decided against it. And I just wanted to express that we've gone through all these different choices and all these, not to say that somebody else wouldn't feel differently about it, but I have to say that we've invested quite a bit of time into building that model. However, having said that, the last thing I'm going to comment on, some of the details are still is just a rendering. It's just a computer rendering. It really doesn't, you do the best you can to give it a feeling, to put the little details of what the windows detail, the frame is like, and what size it is, and this, and the glass, but it's still a rendering, and it's still in real life, it's going to have so much more depth, color, and warmth. Thank you.
Who am I interrupting?
Oh,
Michael?
this is Charles. I was just going to make
Oh,
one
sorry.
comment that
Okay.
a couple folks have sort of referred to the concrete, and this is actually the gray is a fiber cement, and it actually is, you know, sort of relevant relative to what Shaw was just saying. If there is detail in the way these elements go together, and there are reveal lines, there are panels that read, that help break down, you know, the scale further, and so it has a life of its own. It's not, they're not just concrete sort of surfaces. So just to clarify that.
One thing that might address this is to maybe look at a bit of a darker shade on that. I know, I think we started out with that being really light. Was it like white before?
Well,
Or
yeah,
it was-
we have darkened it up considerably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But think about, like, see the letters on state you have here?
Yeah.
You know, if it was that dark, I think it would recede more, and it would allow the building to, you know, the main block, the corner block, to just be a little more prominent. I mean, I would just suggest you play with the colors and see what you think. I mean,
I agree with you, Martha.
yeah, no, okay, yeah. And that might be a simple, you know, a simple fix.
Charles, what is the proposed material for the cornice structure above the brickwork?
It's probably going to be, it's either going to be built up out of wood, or composite material, or it'll be a fiberglass fabrication maybe, but that is painted and looks like wood, but it needs to be durable. It can't be, you know, it has to, you know, it can't be needing to be repainted all the time. And so it needs to be material that's durable, holds the paint, and has, you know, the appearance of being, you know, permanent. It could also be metal. So I think that that's to be determined.
Anybody else on the commission? Okay. So we need to make a decision about whether we want to award a certificate of appropriateness tonight. As I said when I opened this may or may not be the final design of this building, based on what the planning board comes back with, what they require. So our choice is to either award it based on what we see here. And my understanding, Sarah, please correct me on this, because I know we spoke about this way back when, that if we were to award a certificate of appropriateness now, it would be for this design. So if this building changes, it would not apply, correct?
Correct. The commission could and should require submittal of a final plan set that, you know, that corresponds with the details that have been shown. But if significant changes were to be made, then, you know, an additional review would be necessary.
Okay. So those are our choices. Or we could ask, you know, we can ask for a continuation, ask for other developer for a continuation to come back to us after the final, you know, this basically the planning board is signed off. So we have those choices. Does anybody have a feeling one way or another about that? An opinion one way or another? How are we feeling about this? Why don't we go around? Michael?
I would think that it'd be appropriate well, I think a certificate of appropriateness would be a good point of discussion among us. So if you want a motion on that, I would move that we do that.
Okay. Anybody else have another thought about that? Hannah?
I think I personally feel comfortable seconding that motion.
Okay. Douglas?
I also feel comfortable and pleased with the progress that's been reached for this building.
Okay. And so my question is, are you all comfortable with the most recent set of suggestions we made tonight that we would like to see, that they will be incorporated, and so we're okay to endorse this now? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I'm hearing.
That's the way I understand it. Unless there's a significant change in the design from here, I feel like we've made a lot of progress. I really appreciate what we've seen as far as responsiveness from the developer and the architects. And unless there's a significant change at the planning board, I think we can feel comfortable with making a motion on a certificate of appropriateness.
Okay. I just wanted to, before we do that, reiterate the things that we've asked you to look at, Charles.
Yep.
So they would be what happens with the street trees on State, to make sure that those trees are properly engineered so that they, or there, I should say, their installation is properly engineered so they will survive. The trees along Elm Street, replacing those shrubby things with something that's going to be tall and in scale with the building. Looking at possibly adding a little bit more detail to the cornice area. And again, I'm leaving this partly up to you because, you're the architect. We're not this is not our job. Our job is to more comment, but I'm leaving it up to your architectural expertise.
Okay.
And then suggesting also that you maybe darken the shade a bit on that, the block behind, I guess, the main block on Elm, on the corner, to make it recede a little bit. Anything else I'm missing, anybody?
Martha, does this mean that you feel that a certificate of appropriateness is, you'd like to see a response to these things before that, or do you feel comfortable tonight with where we are and just leaving these suggestions for the architectural team to decide?
I think the latter. I think that given how responsive you've been so far, and I do trust your judgment, and I'm pretty adamant about the trees, but the other things, I think that I have to leave that up to your architectural judgment, because you've heard our concerns, right, Charles? You know where we're coming from.
Yeah, definitely. And the shades of gray are always,
Yeah.
but they're always in flux. I like darker shades of gray, and so I'm sure we can come up with. We've heard the board's concerns, and I think that we're sensitive to that, and we will continue to be sensitive when we're picking out our colors and our color palette. So yes, we hear you on that. There is a cornice very similar to the one we're proposing on it's on 155 Live down on Pleasant Street, where it's a single banded cornice that's not broken up by the dentals. And I actually anticipated a comment similar to this when I was looking at taking a hard look at the cornices downtown, and I feel like that the cleanliness of what we're presenting is in keeping with the newer cornices built in town, and honors the existing cornices by not copying them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, I appreciate that. The last thing you want is some sort of ditzy faux historic So, okay. All right. Well, if that's the case, then, Michael, you had, well, why don't you make a motion?
So I would make a motion that we file a certificate of appropriateness for the design as presented.
Okay, and I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, and any more discussion amongst the commissioners?
I would
Okay.
suggest a
Oh.
condition, Martha, that the
Yeah.
signage that's proposed,
Oh,
you
yeah,
make it
forgot
clear
about
that
that.
Oh,
that
right.
that's
right.
not issuing a permit for the sign, since more detail would be needed for that.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yep. Do we need to just state that for the record? As part of the motion?
That would be good.
So I would move a certificate of appropriateness with the reservation that signage be determined at a later point by who does the signage?
The historic, they would have to come back for another certificate of
Okay,
appropriateness.
okay, sure. That signage be determined at a later date.
I
And
second.
Hannah? Okay. So unless there's no more discussion, we will take a vote.
Okay, so roll call vote on that. Hannah,
Yes.
Michael,
I always vote for my motions.
Douglas,
Yes.
and Martha?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Charles and
Thank you.
Shawl.
Yeah, thank you very
Again,
much.
we really appreciate your responsiveness to all of our comments and questions. And, we look forward to seeing what happens. I mean, best of luck with all of it. And
Yeah, thank you. Well, we really appreciate the board's input, and I think a better project came out as a result of it. So,
oh, good. Well,
so
thanks. That's what we
thank
aim
you.
to do. And as I said way back in the beginning, this is an outlier for us. We don't have a lot of new construction at all in the historic district. So I appreciate your patience with us kind of working through the process that's not that familiar to us.
Understood. Yeah, it's a big project, and it's a lot of responsibility, and so really appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. You're welcome to stick around. We just have a few more items to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's see here. So we have a couple more things that we need to do, and it'd be great if we could get them done in the next 10 minutes. One is we need to elect a chair and a vice chair. So that's the next item on the agenda. And we've been without a vice chair for a long time. Actually, ever since I became chair. No, I shouldn't say that. Barbara Blumenthal is a vice chair for a long time. So I'm happy to continue in this role. If anybody else would like to take it over, I'm happy with it to step aside. Whatever you think is best for the commission. Just anybody have any thoughts about that?
I would like to nominate you as chair.
I think you should stay in the role, Martha, if you're willing.
I'm happy to for the time being. As long as we don't have any contentious projects to deal with. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
Okay.
I think longevity is very useful in this, given the fact that the three of us are relatively recent additions to the commission. It's really helpful to have your leadership and guidance on a lot of things.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
So I'd appreciate it if you'd continue.
Okay. So Sarah, do we need to vote separately on these, or could we vote on a slate?
You can vote on a slate, that's fine.
Okay. So does anybody have any ideas about who might want to serve as vice chair? Is anyone who'd like to volunteer for that?
And the role of the vice chair is primarily to serve as chair in the absence of the chair.
Right. Anyone want to volunteer? I really think we need to have one.
Greg, you're the next in seniority. What do you think?
No, thank you. I have a plate full. So
Um,
with that, you know, he who nominates somebody else has nominated themselves.
well, Michael, you're the next, you have the next seniority, except for Dylan, but he's not here, so maybe you should step in
In seniority, I outrank you all. I'll be
for like for a
71
few
in
months, you
July.
know?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to do it as long as Sarah can kind of guide me through the process of making sure in your absence. You do a good job of running the meeting, but I'd need Sarah's guidance to help get me through the formalities, but sure.
And Sarah's great at that. She does a lot of, consoling me. Um,
And
Okay,
because we only meet once a month, often if the chair cannot make it, we just pick a different
the
date
meeting.
that month. So
we could do
doesn't
that.
happen often.
Right. Okay, so does someone want to make a motion to nominate those two positions? I mean, it's left up to Greg, Hannah, and Douglas
Yep.
to do
Since I can
this.
talk, I'll make the motion for the slate of officers.
Okay,
Right.
and second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, great. So we need to vote.
Right, roll call on that. Greg,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Michael,
I always vote for Greg's nominations.
Douglas,
Yes.
and Martha.
Yes,
All right. Excellent.
okay. We also need to establish a demolition review committee. And Sarah, can you explain this? I think you have before, but if you could just explain it to everybody else. How that
Sure. So
operates.
the demolition review subcommittee reviews requests for demolition to determine whether the buildings proposed meet that initial step of being considered significant. So if the timing works out, we have 15 days to make this determination of significance, then we will place it on an agenda. But often it doesn't, so some quick action is necessary to allow people to move forward with their projects. The vast majority of structures are not determined to be significant, due to a variety of factors. But the subcommittee will get an email from me, like with as much information as we have about the buildings and photos, the application, and then we'll make a determination on their own without consulting with other members to make sure that we're in conformance with the open meeting law. Get back to me, and then if necessary, then we'll schedule a hearing, and the whole commission will be involved at that point.
And just to be clear, the subcommittee doesn't actually meet as a group
They do not.
typically.
No.
Yeah, it's all done individually. So
Who was the person who works a lot with the Forbes Library, who pulls all the records and the information together? Was there talk of a gentleman who has been doing that?
Yeah, that's Dylan, and Dylan is on the subcommittee, and though he's not here, I'm sure he would like to continue to do that. And when he is able to find information, then we can pass it along. But a lot of these buildings don't have a ton of information or none at all.
But Dylan is on that subcommittee.
He is, yeah.
and he's very valuable. He always, has a lot of really great input, and it's very helpful. And hopefully he'll be back in April, right, Sarah? We're thinking.
Yeah, hopefully.
How many people do you need on the subcommittee?
3 or 4. It's
I'll be on it.
not everybody is has to get back, but it's good to get a sense of from people whether a building is valuable or not. All right, Hannah.
Yeah.
Dylan.
I would also be happy to volunteer for that.
Okay.
Okay. So, does that do it?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Do we need to vote on the slate?
We don't know.
Okay. And then the final is, we have been without a representative to the Central Business Architecture Committee for a really long time. Like, I don't even remember when anybody was on that, right? I mean,
it was Pauline was the last.
Oh my gosh, okay. Pauline moved away a long time ago. Yeah. So this is a committee that meets only when there's an application in front of it, and it's not very frequent. And my understanding, Sarah, is it's not the side street, it's just the central business, the core of the buildings. Yeah. So,
They meet maybe 3 times a year.
yeah. So I think it would be it's important that we have someone who can be there for that, because it's been so long since we have. I don't know if there's anything that's in the wings out there that's going to be coming up.
Not
Both
aware of
the
anything.
new building on State and then the one, the St. John Canius on Holly are on the side street, so they don't get reviewed. But is there
Hopefully-
anybody that would like to do this? Michael, you had
Hopefully
expressed
33
interest.
King Street at some point. That's the former Registry of Deeds building.
Oh, yeah.
So that hopefully this year.
Okay. That's going to be a big project. So Michael, are you still interested in it? You had expressed an interest in me.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that would, if unless anybody else wants to do that, okay.
And
So
this one we would need a vote for.
okay. So I'm nominating Michael to serve as our representative to the Central Business Architecture Committee.
I'll second that one.
Okay. All in favor? I will vote. Well, yeah, we need to vote.
Greg?
Yes.
Hannah?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
And Martha?
Yes.
All right, unanimous.
Okay. So the only other thing that I wanted to we have a couple minutes, like 1 minute left. We had talked at some point about the possibility of meeting in person again. And I think the remote permission for to have remote meetings has been extended by the state. Am I right about that? Yeah. So we can continue meet remotely. I just wanted to throw out people's opinions about this. Would they rather get together in person? What are they thinking? What are your preference? What's your preference?
I'd prefer to
Hannah.
get together. I'd like to get together in person, but I understand. It's
All right. Michael?
I can go either way. I can see how remotely works for certain things and could be useful in certain circumstances. And I'm also happy to get together in person. So either works for me.
Okay. And Douglas?
I would prefer in person.
Okay.
The question
All
to
right.
that, when it is in person and there's public input, or is it recorded, or is it just everyone's invited to meet at the town hall at this date?
So there's no requirement to have a hybrid meeting, but we certainly could continue that. If we're going to do that, council chambers would probably be the best location for it, although the historic commission traditionally have met in City Hall.
City Hall, yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, so Doug, how about you, Greg?
To be honest, it doesn't matter to me. I am zoomed out, but meeting in
Aren't we all,
person-
right?
oh, and meeting in person was great the few times that we did it.
Mhm.
However, if it's easier for other people, then I'm fine doing it remotely.
Okay. Well, I'm flexible too, so I'm happy to come downtown anytime. So, is this something we have to vote on, or do we just decide?
No, you can just decide.
Okay, so I think we should let's just try in person beginning in April and see how it goes.
Okay.
Sarah, is there a April date for that next meeting?
Yes, it's always the last Monday, so that will be the 28th.
All right, that's settled. If there is no other business on the agenda, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Anybody have any other things they want to air at this point?
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Shaw, we would love to have you air.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for your input. I think that we're all better for the input that you personally and the public. And I enjoyed the process. I know it's challenging and it's always costing more money, but I think the outcome is better. And I think Charles is happy and I'm happy. And I wanted to thank you for that. And lastly, I just want to say, I know there's a couple of changes that as we're looking into the rectory, I'm working with another architect and we have a plan and we have a few little changes that I think that I'm going to come before you to look at. It's not really in the building. It's more like in the very back corner and in the very back, accessibility to handicap and such. But I know you already approved the windows and we will continue with that. There's just very, very slight changes to the windows, but there's maybe a door and a lift, but I'm gonna come before you with that, and it may just be in the next meeting where you will be in person. So I just wanted to thank you all and good night.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thanks, Saul.
you.
We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. We'll have our eyes on that parcel, so,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved, anybody?
Oh, come on, Greg.
You make it. I'll second.
You got the busy schedule. Come on.
I'm going to be here for another couple hours.
Oh,
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good
Good night.
That was you know, I think a really good process. I think we all gave it a lot of thought and you know, this is how it's supposed to work. So we'll hope for the best, that, you know, it has a good outcome. I think it's definitely moving in that direction. So I appreciate all your input and your really great comments. And I think it did really help the building a lot, considering where we started, you know,
Yeah.
none of those windows.
When it started, it really felt like a suburban box, like some people said. And I think that just the small details really, really helped along the way. So,
I
yeah,
think so.
really good
Yeah.
suggestions.
Okay, good.
Thanks
All right,
so
well,
much,
everyone, have a
everyone.
great night. Enjoy the next few months or few weeks, and hopefully the weather's going to get better, so we won't be so cold. And
All right.
yeah. All right. Take
All
care.
right.
Thank you, Martha.
Thanks so much.